Hello everyone. This is the 22nd part of the story, Blade God of Blood. Chapter 43 Abomination, Part 1. The Battle of Blood is a battle of cells. Bert's blood cells want to devour the blood cells of the Hulk, but the blood cells of the Hulk are unwilling to be swallowed up, and they fight back. The power of the blood god is still very powerful. Bert's blood quickly swallowed the Hulk's blood, but it was also dyed green. A wave of uncontrollable anger spread from the green blood to Bert's body. He sensed it carefully and nodded secretly. His previous speculation was correct. He could devour the blood of the Hulk, but he would become irritable. Because the source of the Hulk's power is anger. I don't want to go green! Bert stretched out his hand towards the green blood in the air. The green blood lost its spirituality and fell on his hand, turning into a hard green stone. Bert put away the green stone, took out a test tube from his pocket, and filled it with a few drops of Hulk's blood. Then, he opened his hand, and a cloud of blood flew out from his palm, lurking under the experimental table. Next, just wait for the Hulk to enter New York. Bert changed back to Ant-Man and left here silently, just like he came in. The next plot is the same as in the movie. General Ross took someone to arrest Banner, but as a result, Banner turned into the Hulk and kicked all the soldiers, and even caused the factory to be smashed into ruins. After this incident, Banner decided to smuggle back to New York to find Mr. Blue, because he wanted to completely solve the problem of the Hulk. To get his mutated data, Banner sneaked into Culver University where he used to work. Here, he and Betty met again. Betty put aside her current boyfriend without any hesitation and returned to Banner's arms. Betty's current boyfriend is a good character. He was worried that Betty would meet a bad guy, so he reported the incident to General Ross. So General Ross set a trap at Culver University and had an intimate date with the Hulk. In Blood God Manor, Frank looked at the Hulk, who overturned the off-road tanks with machine gun bullets on the holographic projection TV, and asked in shock, "Where did this monster come from? It's so terrifying." "It's a bit scary indeed, even tanks can't stop him." Ivan nodded in agreement. In addition to him and Frank, Mercury and Electro were also there, and they were all called by Bert to watch the live broadcast. "This guy is called the Hulk." Bert sent a document to everyone saying, "Banner was originally a genius doctor, but because of an experimental accident, he turned into a monster. His girlfriend once came to me and wanted him to become a superhero, but I rejected him. He can't be a superhero. He can't control his powers." Electro Man shook his head. He always felt that he was miserable enough, but he didn't expect anyone to be more miserable than him. Frank said dissatisfiedly, "General Ross is going too far. He brought ordinary soldiers to encircle and suppress such monsters. He is completely asking them to die. Hey, he didn't even evacuate the students. What is he doing? How can he care about this? He only cares about whether he can catch Banner and make himself rich. By the way, he will also say that all this is for national security." Bert sneered. In the short time they spoke, the Hulk had overturned 5 off-road tanks, and one of them was smashed by him. Although the soldiers were brave, in the face of such a monster, they can't help but feel fear. At this moment, a man rushed out with a grenade gun and fired several shots at Hulk, and the grenade exploded on Hulk. But what is desperate is that Hulk was not injured. He was provoked, and he picked up a piece of the car door and smashed it at the man. The man jumped up several meters high, took out a pistol in the air, and shot at Hulk repeatedly. There is no doubt that this was completely useless, except to make Hulk even angrier. The Electro Man asked in surprise, "This soldier is an enhanced person?" "It should be the enhanced man developed by General Ross himself. He has been trying to copy the super soldier serum of Captain America. Now it seems that he has researched something. Of course, it is not perfect, otherwise he would have taken credit for it." Bert said that person was Emil Blonsky. The future Abomination was a super fighter who still refused to leave the front line at the age of 39. On the screen, Emil received an order to lead the Hulk, who was holding 2 doors in his hand, to the side, where 2 vehicles mounted with sonic cannons were waiting. As soon as the Hulk entered the attack range, the two sonic cannons immediately launched with full force, and the sound waves shrouded the Hulk in a waveform visible to the naked eye. Even Hulk was in trouble in front of such a sound wave, and even knelt on the ground in pain. Ivan praised. "This thing is pretty good." Bert glanced at Ivan and smiled. "Look at the mark, it should be produced by Stark Industries. What that sissy produces is useless." Ivan immediately changed his tongue, and everyone laughed. At this time, Hulk used the door to block the sound wave and then threw it hard. The door, on the other hand, bisected the sound wave cannon like a sharp blade and exploded. Then, Hulk roared, jumped on top of another sonic cannon, and stomped it directly. "I just said it's useless." Ivan laughed, and everyone was speechless. At the same time, on the screen, the angry Hulk kicked the provocative Emil. Emil hit the tree, and the whole person was deformed. Frank shook his head and said, "It seems that General Ross is going to fail this time." General Ross was reluctant to admit defeat, and sent a gunship to attack, which almost killed his daughter, but it was Hulk who protected her with his own body. In the end, Hulk exploded the gunship and fled the university with Betty. "Okay, it's over," Bert said. "Ivan, can your battlesuit deal with that monster?" Hearing the battle armor, everyone present was not surprised, including the Electro, because Bert told him about it before. "You said before that there will be a battle in a few months, referring to this monster?" Ivan asked. "How did you know he would show up?" "I don't know if it's him, but I know that there will be a disaster in New York. Judging from the current situation, he is very likely," Bert said. "He can't control himself. Once he goes crazy in the downtown area, a lot of people will die. Never let this happen." Electro Man hurriedly said, "We must catch him before he goes mad, or drive him out of New York." Bert said, "It depends on Ivan's battle armor." Everyone looked at Ivan, and Ivan said confidently, "This monster is very strong. But if the four of us join forces, we can deal with him." "Great!" Electro was overjoyed. Frank thought for a while and said, "We can't fight him in the downtown area. It will be a disaster." Bert said, "Let's prepare first, and when we find him, we will formulate detailed tactics." "Okay, I'm going to adjust the battle armors. Frank, Mercury, you guys too. To deal with that big monster, we need a bit of a trump card." Ivan said excitedly, "It's finally time for him to appear." A few days later, Banner and Betty came to Greyburn College, where they met Mr. Blue, Samuel Stearns. At the same time as the two sides met, the surrounding police stations were alerted that someone found a bomb in a trash can on the street, and there was a letter on it, saying that there were 9 bombs around. Alarmed, the police immediately called for support and evacuated residents near the academy. Banner and Stearns don't know what's going on outside because they've locked the doors and windows, and no one knows they're in the lab. It's a secret meeting. "I decided, I want to inject the antidote." After listening to Dr. Stearns' introduction, Banner disregarded the danger of the experiment and decided to forcibly inject the antidote. He was fed up with the Hulk. He didn't want to become such a monster again. He wanted to be a normal person. Betty couldn't make Banner give up, so she could only pray for him. I have to say that Dr. Stearns is still a bit capable. Although something went wrong in the middle, the antidote he made was still successful under the control of the drug. The almost transformed Banner had to abruptly change back to a normal person. The Hulk was temporarily restrained, just restrained, not cured. When everyone was happy, a part of the blood hidden under the experimental bench climbed up to the experimental bench silently, and then quietly infiltrated Banner's body from his back. Then, this blood all gathered in Banner's heart and merged with the heart. If Banner is still in a normal state, this kind of thing will never happen. As soon as the blood invades Banner's body, Banner's blood will turn green to fight back. But now, because of the influence of the antidote, Banner is suppressed, so the blood invaded smoothly. Even if Banner recovers in the future, this blood will not be driven out. Because they have been fused with the heart, there is only one way to expel it, and that is to dig out the heart. Putting aside these for a while, Banner, who felt that he was getting better, was not happy for a long time before he was caught by Emil. Emil injected a second booster and returned to normal. Then, Emil kept beating Banner, trying to make Hulk appear again. It is a pity that Hulk did not appear, and it was still the thin scholar Banner. Emil was very unwilling, but because of General Ross's order, the soldiers could only take Banner away. Emil was not reconciled. He grabbed Dr. Stearns and asked him to put Hulk's blood into his body. Dr. Stearns didn't want to do it, but was beaten by Emil and could only obey with tears. Bert sensed the situation in the laboratory and thought to himself, "Super soldier serum can make good people more kind and evil people eviler. The semi-finished product injected by Emil seems to have this effect." When Hulk's blood was injected into Emil's body, Emil's whole body quickly swelled, and even his clothes were torn. In a short period, Emil turned into a monster with muscles all over his body, nearly 3 meters tall. Abomination, officially born, he and Hulk have some differences. For example, he has no hair, and his spine and some bones on his body are bulging. Quite a monster. Compared to him, Hulk is considered beautiful. This is power! Abomination clenched his fist full of strength. Not only did he not feel ugly, but was ecstatic. Dr. Stearns thought he was angry, and rambled on with explanations, but he was knocked out by him. Dr. Stearns slammed into the cabinet and fainted. There was a bottle of Hulk's blood just above the cabinet. It was shaken and dripped downward. If nothing else, this drop of blood will drip into the wound on Dr. Stearns' forehead, and then his head will grow bigger and become a mutant. And then no more, because the box office of The Incredible Hulk smashed the streets. The big villain, big boss of the third film completely lost the chance to appear. In reality, the big boss also didn't have the chance to appear, seeing that blood was about to drip into Dr. Stearns' forehead. A big hand composed of blood quietly dragged him away, and the blood of the Hulk dripped with a thud on the floor. The owner of this hand is, of course, Bert. His body is remotely controlling this hand nearby, and the reason why he pulled Dr. Stearns away is that he didn't want a villain that he didn't understand at all, or a villain with a high IQ. Abomination, who was full of strength and just wanted to vent. He roared, smashed the glass, and jumped outside. With a bang, the building shook. Immediately afterward, there were fierce gunshots from below, but it was the soldiers who stayed behind who discovered the abomination. Unfortunately, they were not opponents of abomination at all, and they soon became the target of slaughter. Bert didn't care about the following. He controlled the big hand to take all the blood from the research room away. This is precious research material, and more importantly, it cannot be left to the military and SHIELD. With PIM particles, it's not difficult to take them away. Before Bert finished scraping, Abomination had already taken care of all the soldiers of Greyburn College. Unsatisfied, he broke through the fence and rushed out into the street. To Abomination's astonishment, there was no one on the street. There were some police officers in the distance, but when they saw Abomination, they immediately turned around and ran away. There was no sense of police responsibility at all. This is an order from George Stacy. At this moment, he is remotely commanding the police in this area. At the police headquarters, Electro Man informed him that there is a B-level incident. A B-level event, an event that can destroy a district in New York, is the alert level set by the owner of the Watchman Company. Looking at the ugly and ferocious Abomination on the screen, Chief George muttered to himself, "Is this the monster that can destroy a district? Director, although this monster is terrifying, the B-level incident is too exaggerated. Could it be more powerful than Iron Man?" A policewoman couldn't help but ask. Chief George was about to answer. The Abomination on the screen suddenly roared, rumbling and chasing the fleeing policemen, and the cars along the road were blown away by him one by one. Bang, bang, bang. Hitting the building next door. This is not over yet. When the car fell, many of them rumbled and exploded, turning the surrounding into a sea of fire. Just a simple pursuit, half a street was almost destroyed. The picture on the screen made the police officers take a deep breath at the same time, and no one doubted whether it was a B-level incident anymore. Chief George couldn't help but feel fortunate that he transferred the public away in advance. Otherwise, the casualties would definitely be great. But then again, who set the bomb? Chief George picked up the walkie-talkie and ordered loudly. All the police retreat immediately. Electro Man, Hell Sisters, are you there yet? Electro Man's voice sounded. We're almost there. Get there as soon as possible. The police can't stop this monster, Chief George said, and the policewoman asked aside. Chief, do you need to dispatch the Thunder Squad? Chapter 44 Abomination Part 2. No, I've invited the strongest superhero in New York to help. Speaking of the Thunder Squad composed of reinforcements, Director George couldn't help but sigh. They were indeed very strong, but their will was too weak. The typical mud could not support the wall. No wonder the blood god gave these people away so easily. At this time, a heavily armed convoy arrived here, but it was the soldiers who rushed over after receiving the call for help. They were shocked when they saw the abomination, and while reporting to the top, they fired at the abomination with a vehicle-mounted machine gun. Although the onboard machine gun was powerful, it could not break the defense of abomination. He was very angry when he was attacked. He grabbed a car with one hand and threw it hard. The car slammed into the armed car with a bang. The soldiers turned directly into bolognese. Use an RPG! The officer in the other car roared, and soon, 2 rockets with long tails shot at Abomination. Abomination dodged one rocket, then reached out to grab the other one, but it slammed into his chest. Boom! The fire wrapped the Abomination, and when the fire disappeared, the soldiers were horrified to find that the Abomination had almost no damage. Retreat! All soldiers retreat! General Ross, who came back by helicopter, yelled, and Banner and Betty couldn't help but yell at him. This is the monster you want! The soldiers received the order and hurriedly retreated, but Abomination remained behind. In just a short time, 2 more tanks were overturned by him. Seeing that the remaining soldiers were also doomed, thick electricity suddenly moved towards Abomination. Shoot! Abomination roared, and the place where it was shot was charred black, but that was all, and what was even more terrifying was that in less than 2 seconds, the charred skin was restored. How do you fight this? Electro Man was stunned. At this time, the Abomination raised the car next to him and smashed it toward Electro Man in the sky. Electro hurriedly avoided, and at the same time shouted to the Flying Sisters. You can't deal with this monster, go and save others. The wounded and those who were not moved. With that said, Electro again blasted the electricity at Abomination. Abomination blocked it with the door and then kicked the car in front of him toward Electro. Electro Man is extremely fast, easily dodging the car, and then, while moving as fast as electricity, he used the electric current to attack the Abomination. The Abomination was furious and keeps smashing things up, but he can't hit the Electro Man at all. Trish and Jessica saw the power of Abomination and did not dare to approach, and turned to save the soldiers who were not dead. At this moment, accompanied by a burst of rock BGM, a golden-red figure descended from the sky and shouted, Superb of Bert's family, let me deal with this monster! Iron Man is officially here. Director George invited him. Electro Man shouted to Iron Man, Be careful, this monster is not only powerful but also heals itself. Boy, he's strong for you, but not for me. Tony said arrogantly. The miniature missile on his shoulder was launched, and it banged on the Hatred body, and the firelight instantly covered the Abomination. Tony was about to show off how powerful his missile was when he saw Abomination jumping toward him with almost no damage. A height of tens of meters was nothing to Abomination. Tony was startled. His feet sprayed flames to avoid Abomination's pounce, then raised his hands. 2 repulsors blasted at Abomination, and Abomination slammed into the street, smashing a deep pit into the ground. Tony raised his right hand, and a missile bounced, shooting at Abomination. Abomination picked up a piece of broken cement on the ground and smashed it at the missile. With a bang, the missile exploded, the shock wave swept the surrounding area, and even Iron Man was pushed back several meters. Before Iron Man could attack again, Abomination got up and threw the things around him into the sky one after another. Everything is like a cannonball. Even Iron Man, in the face of such an offensive, has become a little embarrassed. Seeing this, Electro Man hurriedly attacked the Abomination with the electricity, and let the Abomination turn the target to him. It seems difficult to deal with. Jarvis, concentrate all the energy in my chest. Tony gave the order. The chest of the steel battle suit shone brightly, and then, a beam of light with a thick bowl blasted toward the Abomination below. There is another difference between Abomination and Hulk, that is, Abomination has wisdom. Although he was restrained by the Electro Man, he did not relax his vigilance against Tony. When he saw Tony's chest shining brightly, he immediately raised the car next to him to resist. Bang! The car was shot through a big hole on the spot, and the beam of light slammed into the Abomination with all its strength. Tony was amplifying his move, and before he had time to dodge, he was smashed by the car with a bang, and then spun heavily and fell to the ground, smashing the concrete floor into a deep pit. Before Tony could recover, the light on his chest was blurred, and the Abomination jumped up and smashed Tony with his feet. Tony hurriedly activated the jets on his feet to avoid the Abomination's stampede. With a bang, the ground was smashed into a big hole by the Abomination, and even the building next to it shook. Tony wanted to escape, but Abomination stepped forward and grabbed his leg, and slammed it towards the wall next to him. Boom! The wall was smashed. Tony was getting dizzy and quickly released the induction bomb to attack Abomination's face. Although Abomination was hit, his eyes and nose were extremely uncomfortable. He didn't let go of Iron Man's leg. With a roar of hatred, he threw Iron Man into the sky, and then smashed heavily. Iron Man flew in response, not only knocking over 3 cars, but also collapsing a nearby shop, and fell into the ruins without knowing his life or death. Iron Man! The onlookers watched like they were falling into an ice cellar. Even Iron Man is not the opponent of this monster? Defeating a strong enemy, Abomination clenched his fists and roared up to the sky. I am the strongest! Banner in the helicopter made up his mind. I have to go down and stop him. Betty hurriedly stopped. No, you can't go down. Now no one knows if you can transform. I have to go down. It's my responsibility. Banner glanced at Betty and fell, and then, with a bang, he smashed a deep hole into the ground. Abomination is a bit unresponsive. Is this someone committing suicide? Immediately, Abomination shook his head, intending to solve Iron Man completely. At this moment, a big green hand came out of the pit, and then Hulk jumped out of the pit and roared at Abomination. I've been waiting for you for a long time. Abomination was not surprised but happy and rushed towards Hulk. In the firelight, the two behemoths collided fiercely, and the shock wave gushed out like a wave, and all the surrounding glass shattered. Go and save Iron Man, I'll see what I can do. Electro shouted to Trish and Jessica. The two women nodded and jumped into the glider to rescue Tony from the ruins. After removing the bricks, Trish and Jessica quickly found Iron Man. His suit was deformed, but he seemed to be fine, and there was still time to joke with the two women. Are you here to ask me for an autograph? I'm sorry, it's not very convenient now. Jessica pulled Iron Man out of the ruins with brute force, and said with contempt, Who would ask for your weak chicken's autograph? Tony said dissatisfiedly. Weak chicken? Little girl, do you know who you are talking to? What do you say? Jessica was about to taunt when Trish said, Treasure girl, Master wants to see him, let's take him up. Don't call using that shitty name. Jessica scolded angrily and jumped on the glider with Iron Man on her back. Then, she and Trish took Iron Man to see Bert. While debugging the suit system, Tony asked, Who is your master? If he wants to see me, make an appointment first. The two women ignored Tony, and soon, they flew to the roof of a building, where two people were quietly watching the battle below. One of them is naturally Bert, and the other is Bert's new assistant Lilith. She is a big beauty with a hot body and a good appearance, but she is cold as ice. It is worth mentioning that Lilith was holding a pitch-black spear in her hand. The two women put Iron Man in front of Bert. Bert turned around and asked with a smile, "Tony, are you ashamed to see me?" Tony opened the mask, and with blood on his forehead, he snorted coldly. "Who has no face to see you? Humph, didn't you say that you are very powerful? Why don't you stay here and deal with that monster?" "That monster, I can solve it in a second." Bert smiled and said, "Narcissistic girl, don't hide, come out and check the injury for our Iron Man, lest he dies." "It seems that you remember my smell very well, scumbag." Natasha's figure slowly walked out of the darkness. With such a big thing happening here, Nick Fury would send someone to check it out. After Natasha came, she found Bert on the roof and ran to monitor him. "Scumbag, narcissistic girl, you seem to have a lot of stories?" Tony said. "Also, I'm not injured, I'm fine now, alive and well, cough, cough." Just halfway through, Tony coughed violently. He was injured. Natasha came over and said, "Hey, get out of the battlesuit quickly. Can your battlesuit be detached automatically?" Tony said, "It takes a machine to help me take it off." "Oh, wait, there seems to be a man here who claims to be able to take off my suit in 3 seconds. I don't know if he is bragging." Bert smiled lightly, stretched out his hand to ask Lilith for a spear, and then said, "This spear is 2 meters long and weighs about 98 pounds. Surely, with my strength, it can be called invincible." While speaking, Bert waved his spear lightly, and the spear cut through the cement wall as easily as cutting tofu. "Vibranium?" Tony was startled and hurriedly said, "My battle suit can monitor my situation. My injury is not serious. There is no major problem. Also, I asked Edson to come to pick me up. He will be here soon." Natasha walked up to Tony and put her hand on his neck to check his pulse. Tony glanced at her and didn't refuse. The reason was very simple. She was a beautiful woman. If it was a rough man, he would have pushed her away. Natasha put down her hand and said, "He shouldn't die." Tony giggled. "I think we can do a detailed inspection," Natasha said with a smile. "Okay, go to your house." "Okay, talk about it later. Tony was just about to agree, but he remembered the pepper at home, and he hesitated. He turned to Bert and asked, "Where did you get so much vibranium?" "I found someone to buy it, $10,000 a gram," Bert said. "This spear cost me $50 million alone." Tony snorted coldly. "What's the matter? The material cost of my battle uniform is hundreds of millions of dollars. It's just a weapon, and I just calculated the price of vibranium." Bert said lightly, "In fact, the vibrating gold contained in this spear is as high as 20 kilograms, but he kept a low profile and did not say it." "Two dead tyrants." Looking at the two guys who were showing off their wealth, Natasha, Trish, and Jessica rolled their eyes at the same time. Natasha pointed down and asked, "That big guy who just came out doesn't seem to be the opponent of the big monster. You don't plan to do something?" Bert and Tony looked down and found that the Hulk was being beaten by Abomination. If it hadn't been for the Electro Man to help all the time, the Hulk might have been defeated. This situation is normal. Hulk has not recovered his full strength, the antidote still works in his body, and his combat skills are far less than the abomination of being a Special Forces soldier. "I'd love to help, but I'm incompetent right now." Tony smiled wryly, and secretly made up his mind. "In the future I must get a few more sets of battle suits for backup, and the battle suit must have an automatic detachment function." Bert smiled and said, "Don't worry, I've already prepared. You guys just wait and watch the show." Natasha narrowed her eyes and asked, "Have you been prepared? Did you know this would happen?" "My original target is not that monster." Bert didn't say much. He didn't need to explain anything to anyone. The Hulk's defeat made many people feel hopeless, such as General Ross, who frowned. Even the Hulk couldn't do it, should he send missiles to wash the ground? The problem is, this is Manhattan. I am invincible! Pressing Hulk's body, Abomination yelled excitedly, this is what he wants, to become an invincible person. At this moment, a voice suddenly came from the sky. Invincible, just you? The frog at the bottom of the well! Turning his head in disgust and anger, he saw 3 steel figures descending from the sky with long white smoke, looking at him menacingly. Seeing these 3 figures, everyone was stunned. Among them, Tony was the one who responded the most, and he shouted, "This is impossible!" Tony reacted so much because it was 3 sets of steel armor, which should have been the only steel armor he mastered. The set in the middle, silver and black, is as huge as a steel bully, very heavy, and holds a big axe in his hand, which is daunting. His driver is a crazy Russian, Ivan Vanko. The one on the left standing behind, a camouflage color, slightly larger than the steel suit, full of firearms, including a Gatling, a large sniper rifle, a howitzer, etc. Its driver is the Punisher, Frank Castle. The set on the right is aqua blue, with a body shaped similar to Iron Man. It has a peculiar streamlined beauty, which makes people know at a glance that the driver is a woman. It does not have those complicated weapons, only 2 daggers, and the driver is a vampire, Mercury. On the chests of the 3 sets of steel armors, there is a pattern of a flying fire dragon, which is the group logo designed by Bert after he joined the Oscorp. This marks the end of part 22 of the story, Blade God of Blood. Thank you for listening. Please like the video and hit the subscribe button to listen more. Hit the bell icon to get notified of all the new content uploaded to the channel ASAP.